Respected colleagues, my name is Umesh Jeevan and I am the chairman of the KwaZulu-Natal Legal Practitioners Association. On behalf of the KZN Legal Practitioners Association, it is my honor to welcome you to this conference, historic conference, because it's the first time that the Law Society of South Africa has hosted this conference in another province. Usually Gauteng was the preferent venue, and in particular Pretoria or Gauteng. So whilst Gauteng has the gold and called Igoli, Cape Town has the mountain, Table Mountain, we got something else that's going to surprise you. It's called sugar. So I say that because the land that we're on, largely where the airport is situated, and many of you have come by air, was all sugarcane fields. And that sugarcane fields have now developed into residential property, have developed into hotels and casinos, as you see in this complex. And the growth of Umhlanga has gone north, and we have constant growth. And if you visit Umhlanga, you'll see we have skyscrapers that can be compared to some of the best, most beautiful buildings in the world, including Dubai and London. So if you have a chance, please support the local economy and visit our shopping centers and visit the beaches and visit the recreational facilities at the malls. I'd like to welcome our honorable guests. Firstly, the president of the Law Society, Ms. Eunice Masipa, the LPC chairperson, Ms. Janine Myberg, who I fortunately got to have breakfast with this morning. I said the ideal way to start your day, of course, was the perfect way to start my day was to get to have breakfast with two beautiful women, compared to going to an office and reading small print. The KwaZulu-Natal Judge President who will be joining us, Judge Poyo Dlawati, the Master of the High Court Durban, Edwin Pascoe, the Ombudsman of the Legal Profession, Judge Siraj Desai, Director General of the Department of Justice, Advocate Dr. Mashabane. I'd like to welcome you to the sunny shores of the East Coast and to my hometown, Umhlanga on the Rocks. The LSSA envisages that in future, each of the provinces will have an opportunity to host the annual general meeting to give practitioners from each province the opportunity to attend at minimal cost to themselves and give them all an opportunity to experience the latest developments in the practice of law and the technology related to their practices. In preparation for this conference, I have had the opportunity to consult with the Minister of Electricity, as he's commonly called, Mr. Ramakopa, and he has assured me that for the duration of the conference there will be no load shedding and both Medupi and Kusile power stations will not need any emergency maintenance. I've also consulted with the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment of the Republic, Ms. Cressy, and she has assured me that there will be sunny skies for the duration of the conference, including Sunday, which I hope many of you will stay to enjoy the good weather. I've arranged for the outside temperatures to range from 26 to 32 degrees Celsius. To enable delegates to go fishing or to go for a swim in the ocean, the average water temperature will be 24 degrees Celsius. The theme of this year's conference is envisaging the future of the legal profession. During the sessions, there will be contributions by academics and practitioners on how best to implement, how artificial intelligence is implemented both in education and in their practices. I wish to thank our 10 sponsors whose stalls you would have seen on registration. Alton Document Solutions, Juta & Company, Mercedes-Benz, which was quite an entrance to make, I must say, with the cars parked in the front. Professional Providence Society of South Africa, AJS, Fiduciary Institute of Southern Africa, FISA, LexisNexis, Wins Global Travel, Oxzone Consulting Group, and DocFox. I request delegates to please support these companies by visiting their stalls and obtaining further information on their products and services. A big thank you to all our guest speakers and practitioners and my fellow practitioners and colleagues who have made yourselves available to share their insights and experiences with us at this conference and to make it a success. Our registration numbers were exceptionally wonderful. We got over 450 delegates in person and 250 delegates online. Once again, I welcome you to the East Coast, my hometown. On behalf of the LSSA and the KZN Legal Practitioners Association, we wish you a stimulating, productive, and enlightening and memorable conference in Durban. Thank you. I now hand you over to Eunice Masipa, who is the president of the Law Society of South Africa.
Thank you once again, Umesh, for organizing the good weather for us. Highly appreciated. I'd first like to recognize the Judge President of the KZN High Court in her absentia. I'd also like to recognize the Legal Ombuds, Judge Desai. I would also like to recognize Ms. Janine Maiberg, the Chairperson of the Legal Practice Council, Mr. Mvundlela Nkosana, the President of the Black Lawyers Association, together with your Executive Committee, Mr. Mvuzo Nokesi, the President of the National Association of Democratic Lawyers, together with his executive committees. You are recognized, colleagues. I would also like to recognize the President of the Law Society of Lesotho, together with his delegation. You are welcome, colleagues. We also have a delegation from Namibia. You are welcome, colleagues. Members of the legal profession, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. We've got practitioners from as far as Limpopo, from the Free State, from Gauteng, and to travel this far shows a clear commitment to the legal profession. And it also shows a clear commitment to making meaningful contributions to shaping the future of the legal profession. So your presence here, colleagues, is not taken very lightly. It is highly appreciated, and we are looking forward to your meaningful engagements. Umesh has already done the pleasantries. He's welcomed us. He's organized good weather. The Minister of Environment paid for good weather, so we're good to go. What I will do now is just jump into my annual report, considering that I have welcomed all the legal practitioners and have welcomed all our esteemed guests. I know that the Director General, together with the Acting Chief Master, are supposed to join us, but they will join us after 11 o'clock once we are done with the formal program regarding our annual report and the annual financial statement. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And with that being said, I will go straight into the presentation of my annual report, which is the core business of the day. The annual report was circulated to, before I go into my annual report, I need to see where my council members are sitting. I had expected that each and every one of our council members from the HOC would be sitting in front, because this is an AGM of the HOC. I'm the president, I may be the president, but we all have to account to members of the legal profession. So I'm expecting that we should all be in the front. I don't see my council members. I see this table, that table, where, yes, where are, but come on. We need to account, colleagues, so I need you here. But it's okay, it's fine. Okay, the annual report was circulated to all council members, and the annual report is also part of the conference pack that was provided to practitioners who are attending the conference today. So I'm not going to read what is already in front of you in the interest of time. I'd like to believe that the report that has been circulated or that is in front of you, I'd like to believe that members have read it. But what I will do is I will just go through some of the most important highlights of what transpired in the previous year from between 2023 and 2024. And with that being said, colleagues, the past year has been a year of change for the legal profession. And the challenges that we were faced with has tested the leadership of the Law Society of South Africa. It has also tested the objectives and mandate of the Law Society of South Africa. We have seen the advancement of artificial intelligence. We have seen increased compliance costs and the reduced economic capacity. We have also seen increased regulatory fees as well as compliance fees, which obviously puts a barrier in terms of practice costs. But colleagues, I just want to say that the Law Society of South Africa's mandate has always been to push the transformation agenda, which is more than just demographics. As I said, the course of legal practice and the sustainability is an aspect integrated in everything that we do within the Law Society of South Africa. Part of our mandate or our objective is to foster inclusivity, is to also ensure that we unite the profession. So in everything that we do, the underlying principle is that we do not want to see the profession collapse. We need to ensure that we are united. So that has been the underlying principles that has shaped the resolutions that were taken by the Council of the LSSA in the past year. I will then speak on legal education. The funding of legal education has been a challenge for the profession, and the core funding by the LPFF, including the subvention of regulatory activities, has impacted the LPFF. The LPC, as we all know, allocates the funds from the LPFF, and the trend, as we have observed, we have seen a reduction in our allocation in terms of our legal education budget. So this year we have seen a significant reduction of about 11 million rands. I stand to be corrected. The chairperson of ARC will correct me if I'm wrong when he does the financials presentation. But that substantial reduction significantly impacts the quality of legal education that we have to offer as the Law Society of South Africa. We had a bilateral meeting with the LPC, which was a very good meeting because as the LSSA, we were very concerned as to how were we going to fulfill our contractual obligations because we are a contractor to the LPC. How do we fulfill our contractual obligations with our significantly reduced budget? As far as we are aware, the legal education funding is ring-fenced from the LPFF. So we were not expecting such a significant cut in terms of our budget regarding legal education. Now, you can imagine that it is going to impact, as I already stated, significantly the quality of legal education that we are offering to our candidates. And I think it's one of the key items that I urge members as we are going to engage the annual report to discuss as to how can we foster a relationship between the LPC. Okay. What did I do? Okay. How can we foster a relationship between the LPC, the LPFF, and the LSSA? Because I think we have come to a point where these three stakeholders need to work together. And I think as we engage in the report, members can guide the HOC on how to take this forward. Because as you all know previously, the LSSA used to get their funding directly from the LPFF. Now we get it from the LPC. But, with the trends that we have seen, we would want to have a multilateral between the three stakeholders. But we would also need inputs from practitioners as to how can all these three stakeholders collaborate. But the most important issue that I wanted to highlight was that the LSSA's legal education budget has been significantly reduced. And I'm also pleased to announce that the LSSA is now currently offering training in paralegal practice, which is a certificate. This is a 12-month program, and the first intake commenced in March 2024. We had 49 registrations at a cost of 20,500 rands per learner. This means that by the end of the 12 months period, the LSSA would have made 1,004,500 rands in revenue from this particular program. A second intake of students is due to take place in June 2024. So this is one of the most important highlights with regards to what happened in the legal education field. So we have successfully launched a paralegal practice qualification, which is generating revenue for the Law Society of South Africa, which will then speak to its sustainability, because the LSSA has its own objective and mission and a reason for existence, and we need to ensure that we are fit for purpose, and we need to ensure that we are able to survive as a body that was retained post the LPA. So this course, generating this amount of revenue, is also speaking to the sustainability of the LSSA. I'm surprised that colleagues are not clapping hands. I mean, this is, yeah. Yes. Thank you for that. One of the other highlights that I want to also just conscientize members of the conference. The LSSA successfully hosted the BRICS Legal Forum, which was hosted from the 8th to the 9th of December 2023. And during the conference, the LSSA lobbied for the attorneys' profession and their involvement in arbitration, using their skills for international and regional expertise. The legal support of BRICS Plus, Economic Bloc, and the recognition of capacitation of the Global South ensure that developing world takes its rightful place in the world and promotes South African legal skills. This also places the LSSA and the profession strategically for the African free trade area. And I think the LSSA is also calling upon legal practitioners to take their place at the forefront of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the extended African Union Sustainable Development Goals. We also had the Globalization Conference, which was hosted by the LSSA, which was in October 2023, in collaboration with the International Bar Association, the IBA, and the EU Lawyers Foundation, which also demonstrated opportunities and international expertise that can take us forward in international legal expert outsourcing. With the Globalization Conference, we had a good response from that conference, because then it capacitated our legal practitioners. It also exposed our legal practitioners to other areas of the law which we previously deemed exclusive to specific firms. in that particular conference, our legal practitioners, those who were fortunate to attend, were given tools on how to access these opportunities. They were given tools on how to collaborate with international law firms to access these opportunities. And I think that conference was a great success, and we had a good response, and it was a key highlight. And for me, it was very important that we had that conference, because now we are struggling with briefing patterns. We are struggling with lawyers accessing legal work. So we needed to also conscientize our legal practitioners that there are other opportunities over and above what we know. We cannot continue to practice the business of law like our principals practiced 5 years. In as early as 5 years ago, things have changed. We need to adapt to the new climate. And as we had an EXCO meeting yesterday, one of the councillors said, if we do not adapt our practices, then you might as well just write a closing date of your practice, because we cannot deny it, we cannot ignore it. The change has arrived. Hence, you can see the theme of our conference, which speaks to the change of the legal profession. So that was one of the key highlights regarding conferences that the LSSA hosted in 2023. But still on conferences, before I move on to other topics, I just also want to add PALU. PALU is one of the bodies that we are affiliated to, but we are affiliated through SADECLA. And in our AGM last year, July, we had, as you all know, that our previous president, Mabayeng Lenyai, was the vice president for the SADC region within PALU, with her going to the bench. Well, it wasn't automatic, but I then took her seat as the vice president of PALU. So the PALU conference was also a very important conference, which I believe that the House of Constituents should take some resolutions from there and take forward within our country. The theme of the conference was Sovereign Debt Crisis in Africa, which spoke to the role of the legal profession. And this applied to SA and the impact of debt, which is keeping the continent spiraling in an endless loop, trying to service this debt without any resources to achieve the AU agenda and its UN 2030 goals. So from the conference, there were other key takeaways that we reduced to resolutions that the HOC will see how to incorporate within the mandate of the LSSA in its new form as a representative body. And us being a representative body, we need to remember that we don't only speak for legal practitioners, we also speak for the public. So in everything that we do, in as much as we lobby for legal practitioners, we need to keep the public interest also at the same level. So those key takeaways from that particular conference will speak to that. We also had a successful AGM of SADECLA, which was hosted in Angola. I'm not sure if Stanley is here, but it was also a very successful conference. I just did not note the theme under which the conference was hosted, but it's safe to say that we've got our council members who are serving at EXCO level at SADECLA. And the LSSA is really shaping, and the LSSA is looked upon as a source of wisdom within the African continent. Before serving as the president, I really underestimated the power is a wrong word, but I really underestimated the influence that the LSSA has to influence decisions globally and also regionally. And I can tell you for a fact that in Palu, we are now chairing the committee that deals with the sustainability of Palu. In Sadekla, we've got Nokolo Maduba, who serves on the EXCO of Sadekla. We also have Tia, who also serves on the Council of Sadekla. And they are there on the mandate of the LSSA, the mandate of the LSSA being the mandate of legal practitioners who are gathered here today and those on the visual platform. So colleagues, so those are some of the activities or some of the bodies that we need to ensure that we collaborate with. We need to ensure that we always have maximum participation. Because on those platforms, we have an opportunity to influence legislation. We have an opportunity to influence agreements, African free trade continental agreement. We also have a voice in that. We also influence and shape that. So colleagues, let us not take the LSSA's participation in those structures regionally and globally lightly. We also participate in the IBA, and Ms. Tsepo Shabangu is now part of the leadership in the IBA. She is also shaping and influencing policy in the IBA, and I think, you know, practitioners who attend the IBA will know the scale at which it operates. It's a conference that brings together, I think, over about 6,000 legal practitioners from around the world. And to have one of our own as part of a leader in one of the bar commissions it's really a highlight for us, because to get a voice of Africa, forget South Africa. It's really difficult. And when we attended the IBA last year, you could tell that the voice or the topics that are discussed there do not speak to issues of Africans. So it was very difficult to relate to the topics. It was very difficult to relate to what was being discussed, because it was not speaking to our issues and our challenges. But when we have a councillor that has ensured or participated to an extent that they reach that level of leadership at such a big organization, I think it is something that we need to applaud, and also speaks to the relevance of the LSSA. And when I say that the LSSA is looked upon as a source of wisdom, a source of advice, do not take it lightly. Even with the BRICS Legal Forum, we had a situation where the Russians were looking to the LSSA for advice. We had a bilateral with the Russian Bar Association. We had a bilateral with the Chinese that is outside of the BRICS Legal Forum, because they see the great work that we are doing as the LSSA. They see the great work that, or the policies that we are able to implement within our country over and above what we do in the legal sphere. Colleagues, that is as far as I will report with regards to organizations that we are affiliated to and our participation therein. I will then move on to provincial associations. We managed to successfully launch the Northwest Provincial Association, which was launched in March. I just forgot the date, but it was successfully launched in March, so Northwest is fully operational. We have Limpopo Provincial Association, which is also fully operational. We have Northern Cape, which is fully operational. We have the Eastern Cape, which is fully operational. Mpumalanga is due to launch in May. I just don't have the exact date. They are due to launch in May. They have agreed on the constitution. We also have the Western Cape. We had delays with regards to launching the Western Cape because my constituency, Nadel, was taking their time to consider the constitution. But we did give the leadership of the Western Cape assurance that by the time we leave this conference, we will ensure that we have finalized the constitution of the Western Cape and that we are ready to launch. But in as far as I'm aware and the information that I have is that the constitution, or is that all constituencies besides Nadel, which are still considering, and they've got no objection insofar as I know the constitution, but I can safely say that the Western Cape should be ready to launch very soon. We also had Free State Provincial Association. It was a good meeting. Allow me to say it was a good meeting, colleagues from the Free State. I think it is always good when legal practitioners engage, they debate, it gets heated, and after all the heated engagements, we exchange pleasantries. It's good. It shows that we are all trying to shape a document or a legal profession that is in the best interest of all practitioners, and that is inclusive of inputs of all practitioners. So allow me to say that it was a good meeting. So with the Provincial Free State, we had a few teething issues. And the matter was tabled before EXCO. And the issue was that there was a component of practitioners in the Free State who had a strong feeling that their voice was not heard. And that does not align with what the LSSA stands for. And I think this then takes us back to why the LSSA was retained post the LPA, the LPA and the LPC. There was a clear objective of the LSSA, which is to ensure that the legal profession remains unified. I think in all debates that we have, in all engagements that we have, we need to engage with the principle that we cannot see a legal profession that collapses. We cannot allow that. And that is one of the key reasons why the LSSA was retained. Now, because we are an LSSA which is inclusive, which unifies, an LSSA which is constituted of all three constituencies, we received a dissatisfaction from one component of the Free State that they do not believe that they were properly heard at the launch of the Free State Provincial Association. Now, the matter served before EXCO. We had a special meeting. We had a special meeting for that particular issue that was raised because we felt strongly about it. We usually have virtual meetings, but for this meeting, we had to call our council members from Limpopo and Cape Town to come to Kempton Park because ours is to ensure that practitioners remain united, is to ensure that all practitioners are heard. So we deliberated extensively on this issue. And I can safely say that the Council of the LSSA resolved that we should continue with engagements with the component or practitioners in the Free State who feel that they were not heard. We need to have meaningful engagements with them. we should not engage with practitioners with preconceived decisions, and the LSSA does not take any side. And the LSSA is there to mediate, hence we are not involved, we are not involved in the establishment or the launching of provincial structures, to ensure that when there is an impasse, we are able to assist and mediate the situation. So with the Free State, a resolution that came out of the meeting that we had with Council was that we are going to have meaningful engagements with the task team. We are going to have meaningful engagements with practitioners of the Free State who believe that they were not heard. And I can say that the LSSA tried to contact the component of the Free State, which felt that they were not heard. The intention or the aim was to ensure that we come to the meeting with a final position after having engaged the task team and the other component which was dissatisfied. However, we were not able to have that discussion with the component that raised, or practitioners from the Free State who raised the issue that they were not heard. We on our end from the LSSA tried to call them, we sent correspondence, which was not responded to up until the 5th of April. And at that time, it was too late for us to meet so that we can have a response for the AGM. But it was just too late for the purpose of the AGM, but it's not too late for the purpose of engagements. The resolution that was taken at EXCO still stands, which says that we need to engage with all practitioners of the Free State. We need to engage with practitioners who feel that they were not given a platform to be heard. And as the LSSA, we can't take decisions for the provincial structures. So we need to hear from all components. So the position as is to the component which expressed their dissatisfaction. We had a meeting as EXCO last night, and we are saying that we can have the first engagement today in this conference with all members of the legal practitioners to see whether we are able to resolve the impasse as the LSSA mediating, and also to possibly set up a follow-up engagement meeting, which hopefully should be in the Free State, so we have a larger voice of the Free State membership. This takes us back to why the LSSA was retained, because we will not be a body which is representing the voice of legal practitioners if we were not unifying practitioners. We cannot alienate any practitioners in the LSSA. We need to ensure that we are unified. There is a history that I believe old members of the LSSA and council members are aware of, but I will not go into those details. But we are here to unify, engage meaningfully, and ensure that every provincial structure is fully functional in the best interest of legal practitioners and the public. We also had Gauteng Provincial Association, which is the GAA, which was accepted as a representative body of Gauteng practitioners. In the conference or the AGM that we had the previous year, we had issues that were raised by practitioners that they, well, I believe, you know, those issues most of us are very much aware of. But in short, we were mandated to go and sort out the Gauteng Provincial Association. So in the LSSA, we established a task team that was mandated to deal with the issues that arose from last year's conference. The task team was headed by Etienne Barnard, who is not in this meeting. We had Mfana Gwala, who is part of our EXCO. We also had Mrs. Ramagaga, who's our vice president. They were part of the task team that were tasked to go and resolve the issue of the Gauteng Provincial Association. I believe, as you are all aware, that, and it also somehow speaks to the Free State issue that we also experienced. You have to engage with both components. And when you engage with one component, you need to ensure that you engage meaningfully and exhaust the engagements before you go to the other component to engage. But what I can say is that we have engaged, and we are still in the process of engagements with the GAA. And I know that there is also a big elephant in the room regarding the letter of dissociation from the GAA, which was publicized. The GAA is a provincial structure that was accepted by the HOC. So that letter served before council, and council noted that letter. The resolution of council was that we note the dissociation, but we need to go and engage and establish what exactly are the issues, go to the core of the issues. And this is taking us back to the main objective of the LSSA, which is to unify. We can't, look, it would be very unfortunate if we see legal practitioners distancing themselves from the LSSA. I mean, as it stands, we are the body that is recognized as the representative or the voice of the legal profession. And we need to ensure that at all stages or at all times, that voice is maintained. We need to ensure that we contain it within the LSSA and resolve it within the LSSA, so that we also retain our dignity. We also retain our position as a voice of influence. And when I say we are a voice of influence, do not take it lightly, colleagues. So it would be very unfortunate if we as a profession ultimately collapse. But I believe that all legal practitioners are not promoting their own personal interest. They are promoting the interest of the legal profession and that of the public, and the division of the legal profession will not happen. But in short, colleagues, on the GAA, we are still in the process of engagement. We now have to go engage with the Gauteng practitioners. And that is as far as I can report with regards to Gauteng Provincial Association. We also established a committee that was dealing with a document on challenges in the legal profession, and that committee is still working on the document. But as I said initially in my introduction, that the way practices are being run has changed, and that we all need to adapt to the new way of running the business of law. And you can see that practitioners still need to be capacitated in that aspect, because you've got a large portion of legal practitioners, which is mostly sole practitioners or small practitioners, who are being impacted significantly by these challenges in the legal profession, which are as follows. We have artificial intelligence. We all know it's a digital process, which has software, and it disadvantages most law firms and medium firms. And also the use of data linked to technology to manage clients, which you will see in the showcase that we are going to have tomorrow, to indicate or to solidify that the future is now. We need to re-strategize our practices. And I think it is also one of the takeaways from this conference, if I can say so myself, that maybe the LSSA can look at a webinar that can capacitate practitioners to strategize or restructure their firms to enable them to operate in the business of law currently as it is. We also have compliance fees and the time that is associated with that also significantly impacts small to medium practitioners. Regulatory pressures and also sanctions will be ramped up in that aspect. And this is also not unique to SA. But the IBA survey of the profession indicates that this trend will force many firms to closure. Hence, we say that the time is now to relook at the model of our individual practices. And you will note that I referred to an IBA survey, and IBA being one of the bigger bodies that brings together practitioners from all around the world, where we have Ms. Tsepo Shabangu as one of the leaders of the Bar Issues Commissions. So, to some extent, we also have our voice there, and we need to listen to it. And I think it's also a mandate for the HOC to take forward to possibly create a framework or a webinar or training on how to capacitate practitioners to strategize and evolve the way in which they practice the business of law. Because clearly we have seen that many firms, small to medium-sized, are unable to manage. And also with this stringent FIC requirements, we are also unable to manage the risks. And there are inadequate processes and systems that have not been kept to pace with the risks associated with FICA. We have also seen the increased insurance cost and also a range of other compliance costs, which, as the LSSA, we are lobbying on, especially on the PI cover. I think the LPFF is here. If I remember, they said we are due to now start paying from October 2024, but I stand to be corrected. They've got a presentation tomorrow. But I can tell you for a fact that we as the LSSA have lobbied. We have gone as far as Parliament, where we have a parliamentary liaison officer who unfortunately passed away last month, but she has done such great work for the LSSA in Parliament to ensure that we are invited to meetings of committees, to ensure that when we have issues relating to masters issues and other issues, that we get a platform at Parliament to influence policy, to influence legislation. So the LSSA has been lobbying on this added PI cover, and I believe the LPFF and the LPIIF will educate us more on it tomorrow. And if we've got any questions, we'll direct them to them. But then I think also from those questions, we will also extract resolutions and mandate for the Council of the LSSA to take forward. The LSSA have also, well, for the past 3 years, we've been busy with our sustainability process, which is ongoing. And as a body that represents practitioners, if we are saying practitioners need to change the way in which they practice the business of law, we also need to go back to the drawing board, because we need to support these practitioners. So in our sustainability process, we had a very successful strategic planning session, which was over a period of 2 days, which was very intensive, and it really showed the LSSA or the council members that we have got much more potential than we thought. The specialist that we appointed to assist us came with a blank document, and we managed to fill up that blank document with new innovative ideas, with ideas or strategies that could consolidate whatever we have in our LSSA policies, with strategies that could ensure that we maximize what we are doing currently within the LSSA. And with that particular document, which is still ongoing, and we can't unfortunately present it to this AGM because it is not ready, but with that particular document that we have managed to develop, I can safely say that the lifespan of the LSSA is unimaginable. We have such great potential, and we also have to change the manner in which we are operating as the LSSA so that we are able to support the practitioners that we represent. And in our annual report, you will also see some of the work that we have been doing in terms of litigation. We have litigated to the extent that we are able to against the Road Accident Fund. And we continue to do so. And we have been fortunate enough that we had practitioners who contributed to our kitty in order for us to fund the litigation against the Road Accident Fund. So our professional affairs team is always on the lookout. We also have a committee which is also on the lookout to ensure that we are ready to litigate against anybody that seeks to undermine decisions of the judiciary, that seeks to undermine or attack the integrity of the profession, which is also one of the main objectives of the LSSA. Colleagues, if I were to go through everything, I believe we would be here the whole day. The report is sitting in front of colleagues. I believe we have read the report, and detailed reports of all the work that we've been doing, including committees, is in the annual report. You can see that it is a heavy document, so I'm unable to go through the entire document. I'm now going to assume that members have read the document whilst I was presenting or even before, and that members will be in a position to interrogate the report that I just gave verbally, which was just some of the key, not all the highlights, some of the key highlights, as well as important, or some of the important issues that are in the written report. And I think also I spoke to the LSSA's objective as also a public interest body. We're not just a members or professional interest body. So what the LSSA has done, we held an outreach program with the children from the child welfare in Bramley, Tshwane. We educated the children on their rights and the possible repercussions and bad choices. So we have adopted that home as part of the LSSA's social responsibilities. We also successfully hosted the first golf day, which generated an income, which will also speak to the sustainability of the LSSA, generated an income. I just don't have the accurate figures, but we had over 85 participants. So it was very successful. And with this, we are just trying to solidify the relevance of the LSSA. We are also trying to be out there to educate the public that the LSSA is a safe space to look at. You can come to us for legal advice. You can come to us and rely on us to defend the rights of the public, because I think more often than not, as legal practitioners, we tend to be consumed in our own practices and we forget our social responsibilities. So that is also just a part of what the LSSA aims to do and will continue to do. And in engaging the report, colleagues, I will just want to remind everyone of why the LSSA was retained post-2018. And with that being said, colleagues, questions from the floor are not limited to what I have tabled before you. They are not limited to what is in the booklet or the report, which includes detailed reports from committees. We also welcome guidance on how the HOC can shape its resolutions to support legal practitioners. Thank you, colleagues. I'm now going to hand over to Vice President Joanne to open the floor for Q&A and engagement of the report.
Thank you very much. We don't have any questions in the chat box. I see there's a hand here, the lady with the light blue jacket on at the second table. If we could just get a microphone to her, please. Thank you, ma'am. If you could just stand up and introduce yourself and then ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katrina Womack. My question is, seeing that the LSA is doing this course on paralegals, what is the status of the paralegals in our profession? Have they now got a space, or is it still a grey area?
Okay, we're going to take 3 questions this round. We have, is there another hand? Yes, the gentleman with the white shirt on at the table. If you could get the mic to him. There's a mic. Please ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues. And thank you. My name is Bonolo Teb. I'm a member of the BLA from the Free State. Mine is not necessarily a question, more of a concern. I come across, President, this online courses offered by the Law Society of South Africa. Most of them very interesting. There could be a lot one can learn there. My concern is the expenses that comes with those online courses or webinars, if you like. A session of 2 hours on costs, on wheels, or on drafting will be priced at 5,000 rand, 4,000 rand. I don't know, but that is expensive. Some of us cannot afford that. I think going forward, we should look at a way of subsidizing those courses or a funding model of some sort. But my concern is the costs that are associated with very progressive online courses or webinars. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mapula, do we have any online questions? We have one online question. If you could just get the mic to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam VP. We have in the past tried to look at our registration fees, and what I will do is to try and engage again with the gentleman and structures within the LSSA, our standing committee on legal education, to actually again go back and look at our pricing, our fee structure. So I'm happy to actually engage with the gentleman who has actually asked the question. That's something that we continue to look at to try and ensure that we actually accommodate all the practitioners who want to attend our programs. There is also a scale, in a sense. Candidate attorneys do not pay the same fees as your admitted and practicing legal practitioners. Maybe we ought to look at probably another angle or another category to say those who have been in practice for maybe for the first 5 years should actually get a discounted rate. So that's something that we can always look at.
Thank you, Ogilvy. I'm going to hand the microphone to our president to answer the first question about the status of paralegals, and then we will be taking the question on the online platform. Tony?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Ogilvy didn't address the first part of the question. We have a sliding scale, and our maximum fee for the 2-hour session is 900 Rand. For the 4-hour session, it's 1,100 Rand. We do also offer specialized training to public entities, and that is slightly more expensive because that is done through the LSSA, it's not done through LEAD. We call it business development, and it's in our financials. So we also train corporate entities, we train support staff, and then also with regards to the paralegals, that has been an ongoing discussion in the legal, since I've been part of the legal fraternity. But what we do have, there's 2 types of paralegals. The one type is called community-based paralegals, which I served on for many years. That is different from paralegals that work in the offices of lawyers. And the offices of lawyers have got many paralegals, they just have different titles. They got legal secretaries, they got administrative consultants. All of those are, what the lady that asked the question, are actually paralegals. So we do have a draft, a white paper on paralegals, and I know Francois, the president of the BLA, served on that committee of the LSSA that we have, but there has been no progress from where we were with the initial white paper to actually having draft legislation. So that is where we are. So there has been progress, but it is not formalized in terms of an act. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Tony. I think you've covered our president. Thank you for that. Mapula, do we have a question on the online platform? 2 now.
The first question is from Elliot Butani, and his question is, what is the position, if any, regarding and/or appointment of the RAF CEO and his ability to run the fund? The second question is from Perino Palmer. His question is, currently candidate attorneys may not appear in court once their contract of articles expire. What is the LSSA doing to rectify this? May candidate attorneys charge fees once their contract of articles expire? There's a second question, and the second question from Perino Palmer says, my understanding is that the LSSA constitution allows for both organizations and individual practitioners to participate. How do you intend to attract more practitioners? Can you really say you represent the profession? Is this financially sustainable? You seem to have entrenched voting structures in favor of the BLA and the LSSA. Is that correct? Okay, those are the questions.
The appointment of the RAF CEO, the current RAF CEO, well, as the LSSA, we cannot necessarily say that we've got a position, but we always been very firm in our position regarding the manner in which he runs the RAF. We have been very clear, and that is seen in our media statements, that is seen in the litigation that we have done against the RAF. But insofar as a clear position regarding his position as the CEO, the LSSA unfortunately cannot, pronounce or say anything on that. But your answer can be seen in what we've been doing in the media regarding litigation against the RAF. And your question regarding candidates' attorneys, we have, I think we've been trying to engage with the minister for a very, very long time, which is the reason we invited the DG, who's going to join us, and he is the right person who's going to answer that question. We have sent numerous letters. We have tried to get parties to engage with the minister on our behalf where we were unable to get hold of him, just for him to realize the frustrations that candidate attorneys are faced with, because now you've completed your articles, you have not passed your boards, but you are unemployable. Then what must happen with you in that interim? And I think this also is a clear indication that we have reached a state where we must now reflect on the Legal Practice Act. There are clear lacunas in the Act that we cannot shy away from, that we cannot ignore, which this candidate attorney's issue is part of. But the Director General will be joining us. We told him that this is one of the questions that he should expect, and he's not going to leave this room without giving us a clear answer. The LSSA allowing, I didn't get the last question, but all I heard was BLA favoring and voting. But I think you should go relook at our constitution, with all due respect, colleague. That will answer your question. We do not favor anyone. Before looking at the constitution, just look at our mission objectives. That will also answer your question. We are a unifying body. We don't advance the position of any constituency. We have never endeavored to do that. If anything, if you were listening to the report, you will note that we engage with all components or constituencies of the LSSA. But the BLA is just a constituent member of the LSSA with Nadel and the independent practitioners. How are we going to encourage practitioners to be part of the LSSA? We've got provincial structures, which was one of the reasons why the provincial structures were established, so that we've got a greater reach of practitioners in areas where the national body is not able to reach. So we are relying on the provincial structures to do the work, to advocate for practitioners, to assist practitioners with issues they are experiencing in their local courts, in the master's office, and also social justice issues is part of the mandate of the provincial structures. And I believe also in the term of the incoming president, which is my wish, is that I know we had road shows when we were establishing the provincial associations. Now, seeing that we've got provincial associations that are fully functional, I believe now is a time to go back and just solidify that the LSSA is here for the profession, the LSSA is here to support, and the LSSA is an inclusive body. But I believe that road shows will also greatly assist with increasing visibility and reaching practitioners which are not aware of the LSSA's functions, also through the provincial structures.
We have one last question. The gentleman in the back. There we go. You had your hand up. I think it's Mr. Moketsi. Sir, if we can make sure that he gets a roving mic, please. And that'll unfortunately be the last question for this session. We'll then be moving on to the financial issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Chair. And let me also welcome the report by the President. What would have been a question in the beginning has now turned into a sort of a comment that I will try my best to make it as brief as possible. It is particularly in relation to the launch of the provincial structures. Madam President, you would note that that the challenges that are facing, in particular, those provinces that have not successfully launched, which or not recognized to have been launched. At least I'm of the view that my province, Free State, has actually launched. But why I'm saying this is an issue that remains your decision, your further engagement, which you have indicated. I would like to enlighten the committee by raising the following issues, maybe as a background, so that when you engage in these structures that you say they have approached you late, you have that in mind. I'm also aware that I might be fortunate to be part of such meetings. The constitution of the Law Society is primarily what guides the formation of these provincial structures. And the constitution of the Law Society is clear about how the structures are to be composed. This will mean that it's 1/3, and that the components will be the BLA, NADEL, and the independents. That it's in principle. So if you don't agree with that formation, because we can't change the constitution that has been adopted, it means you are defining yourself outside that structure, and therefore you can't be interested unless you want to disrupt. That's the two, because firstly, the constitution is there. You affiliate to the structure because you understand that you are going to align yourself with that constitution. If you can't, and the components are also not negotiable in the sense that they are clear, but these components must work to the interests of the profession, individual members in the profession who have interest in the law society. So that is my understanding in as far as that is concerned. Now, the law society, in its initial collapse and it being resurfaced in the manner that it is currently constituted, also established in some provinces task teams which work together. And I would wish to indicate, in as far as my province is concerned, that even though it was not planned, but probably because of the ability of the members of the Free State legal practitioners who had a meeting, they had actually elected randomly the task team, which I became part of. But the task team was composed of the three components as envisaged in the LSSA constitution: the BLA, NADEL, and the independents. So in its founding, in its formation, all the components were there. I would wish that we have a similar situation in other provinces, and that would have, in principle, have made it easier for the Free State in particular to easily reach an agreement. But because it was a process of engagement, these component structures took time to digest the constitution because they wanted to agree. The ultimate, and these reports were constantly presented here. There were roadshows that were held by the LSSA to enlighten members of the process that was taking place, and these roadshows were also held in the Free State where members were informed throughout this process, members of the profession in general. So they were aware, they were aware of this process. And at a later stage, at each and every AGM of the LSSA, there was a report. The latest report, at least in Free State, was that the constitution was agreed upon and members were represented. So we are quite aware of the process where everyone was engaged throughout the process until the March, the 23rd of May, when it was further indicated that the constitution was agreed upon. So where we are at the moment, it's where we need to ourselves understand this process, how it went about, and understand that whenever we have agreed on the constitution, we cannot at a later stage seek to undermine that process, but we can only bring everyone along and make sure that everyone understands it. So it is my submission that when this discussion are taking place, including in other provinces, because the delays that are being caused now, they are affecting the participation of the provincial structures through its members. And they are also at the same time affecting what would be the unity of the profession, because they are causing more harm than good, because the unity of the profession gets compromised when people agree at a certain point, and because they agree because they have actually been they align themselves with a particular set principle, and later want to deviate from that principle or circumvent the implication of that principle. So if we continue to do so, we are going to undermine the process of unity, and we cannot go on. We will go on, continue tiptoeing around what would have happened at our meetings like we did in the report now. And the reality of what happened in our meetings, and this is not the only meeting, at least I'm aware of the Free State, where there was a serious contestation of the constitution of the LSSA. There was a serious contestation of the leadership of the LSSA. So if we continue to allow those things and not expose them, we are not going to aid unity, because we must all be on board if we are interested in what is to happen with the formation of the provincial structure. So I am saying, Madam President, in conclusion, that in the formation, in the scheduling of the meetings going forward, it be borne in mind what are the founding principle of the LSSA and its constitution, so that we do not deviate from it each time we want to go to advance a particular agenda. Our position is clear about how these structures must be formed. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mweketsi. I did not cut you short because, in essence, you were providing guidance to the team that will be engaging meaningfully to resolve that impasse. I believe I don't have to respond to that because it was just a comment and guidance, which we gladly welcome. I can say that the council has noted the guidance and we will take it forward with the team that will be engaging with the Free State membership. And colleagues, with that being said, I don't want to say in the interest of time, because, well, I've said it already. If there are no further questions, and if there are questions, I'm going to ask that they be emailed to Mapula. And those questions, comments, or guidance will be tabled at the HOC so that we can extract resolutions to take forward and shape resolutions which are in line with the mandate of the LSSA. Colleagues, I believe that was our annual report. I'm now going to call for HOC members to move for the adoption of the annual report. Do we have any? Okay, Clive Hendricks is moving for the adoption of the annual report. Do we have a seconder? Vice President Joanne seconded the adoption of the report. Colleagues, the annual report of 2023 to 2024 is hereby adopted. Thank you. I will now hand over to VP Joanne to take us to our next item.
Thank you, everybody, for your questions in that session. If you are uncertain and you would like to ask more questions, if you want to know who Mapula is, it's the lovely lady in the corner sitting behind the computer with the lovely, colorful dress on. You're welcome to approach her, and she, I'm sure, will give you her email address. Moving swiftly along on the program, the next point for us to deal with is the approval of the annual report and audited financial statements. I would like to call upon the chairman of our Audit and Risk Committee, Mr. Ashwin Trichamji, to take us through the financials and to deal with Q&A, and we will then be passing some motions and asking for adoption and approval. Mr. Trichamji.
To the president, the president, can you hear me?
No, I think they must put it closer to you.
The president. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Thank you. Madam President, Madam Deputy President, distinguished guests, and colleagues. It gives me great pleasure to present to you the audited annual financial statements of the Law Society of South Africa. First of all, the audit resulted in a clean report. The auditors are new. We change them every 3 years, so we had quite a change in the manner in which the auditors approach their audit. I think those of you know, dealing with auditors, each audit firm or audit organization has a different approach to auditing financial statements. So we had a few challenges, but nonetheless, I'm very happy to report that the auditors were satisfied at the end that the financial statements that are before you, and all of you have had a look at it, fairly represent the financial position of the Law Society of South Africa. Firstly, they confirm that we are operating as a going concern and that we comply with all the requirements for that particular purpose. With regard to the audit opinion, there's one aspect that they dealt with, which was a consequence of the change of auditors. And you see the word restatement somewhere there. What happened is that the previous auditors were quite happy with the special projects being reflected as provision in our financials. But these new auditors felt that that is not correct, that it doesn't comply with IFRS as they put it, and they now specifically refer to it as reserves. Apart from that, we've had no differences in terms of approaches. If you look at the if you look at the balance sheet, the assets and liabilities, there is hardly any change in terms of the assets and liabilities. It's almost similar to the previous year, and the auditors were quite happy with that. Then if you look at the the statement of comprehensive income, you'll notice that even there as well, I'm trying to see if the screen behind me, the change in the comprehensive income, the revenue, was almost the same. We look at note 11. And then the other income as well, there was very little difference. And the operating expenditure, there was a very slight increase in terms of the operating expenditure. So the operating deficit this year, fortunately, was positive, and we had no problems with that. You want to change that again? And the rest of the report speaks for itself. The statement of cash flows, I'm not going to go through that in detail, but the notes with regard to the accounting policies are all clearly explained, and the reference to the restatement in note 20 or 21 that I referred to. Other than that, colleagues, the balance sheet is, rather the financials are what they are. If there are any questions, I'll take them. I must indicate, and I think Madam President referred to it in her report, we got challenges for our budget going forward for the rest of the year. We were receiving a particular amount from the LPC, which in turn was utilized for the purposes of running the LSSA, particularly its education division. But we have been advised that they have received a huge cutback on the amount that they receive from the Fidelity Fund, which has a knock-on effect on us at the LSSA. So it's a challenge that the Audit and Risk Committee will have to deal with the new members of the HOC on how best we're going to deal with the challenge. I can disclose in terms of just figures that our budget was cut down by almost 20 million as a result of the cut down that the LPC had. And yes, we are in negotiations with them, and we will see how best we can get a little bit more to assist us. But going forward, it is going to be a challenge. Having said that, I must admit that having been involved with the Audit Committee for many years, we've had these challenges in the past where we've effectively started a cost-cutting exercise where we've requested our members to tighten their belts, as it were, to sharpen their pencils with all the people that are service providers and so on. And somehow or the other, we were able to achieve what we set out to achieve on a cost-cutting exercise process. And that is because of the cooperation that we get from everyone that's involved in the LSSA. The cooperation is quite amazing. As members of the Audit and Risk Committee, we are tasked with the responsibility not of just looking after the fund, but ensuring that whatever monies are spent in terms of decisions that are taken, and more importantly, responsibly. And I'm always been proud of the fact that within the LSSA, the responsibility of everyone involved has been phenomenal. So I just want to say, Madam President, to you and members of the HOC and the entire LSSA, thank you very much for that, because it makes the job of the Audit and Risk Committee that much easier. Having said that, invite any questions that anybody has before we formally adopt the financial statements.
Ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions for Mr. Trikamji, the Chairman of the Audit and Risk? Yes, we have a question from the back.
Thank you, Chair. The Chair of the Risk or the Audit Committee spoke about the challenge of the decreased funding from the LPC, but I'm not clear how he articulates that challenge when your reserves are consistently increasing year on year and currently sitting at 169 million. But further, when I look at the financials and we look at the allocation from the LPC that came in 2019 as a result of the agreement between the four law societies, where the LSSA was granted 50 million, I see that in 2023, only 191,000 was used. So then my question remains as, if from 2018 the funds of 50 million were given to the LSSA, how has the LSSA been operating, as it seems that the closing balance of those funds remains at 49 million? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Charity. Look, as far as the reserves are concerned, we've had this debate before. The reserves resulted as a consequence of an agreement when the four provincial law societies effectively were absorbed in the new LPC, within the new structure. And that money was really given to the LSSA by them for a specific purpose. So I think that we keep it in reserve because we're obliged to do that. However, having said that, we are going to look at the question that you've raised. I think you've raised this with us already. And going forward, that's some of the issues that we will raise as to how we're going to restructure ourselves going forward to meet the challenges that I've referred to. There's another question there.
I don't know if this is a fair question to you, but I just want to know, has the LPC justified why they are reducing it by 20 million? Because our subscriptions are going up. And we don't really know what we're getting for, I don't think we're getting value from money from the LPC, and the value from the money comes from the Law Society. So have they justified why they're reducing it?
I indicated to you, there's a simple answer to that. The LPC's allocation from the Fidelity Fund was substantially reduced, and that had a knock-on effect on their contribution to the LSSA. So it's not something that was done deliberately or for any reason. We've had the debate with them, and look, we will have continued discussions with them. I think Charity wants to say something. I don't want this matter to go any further, Charity, if it's possible.
Thank you, Chair. And just to assist you, Ashwin, the LPC has from 2018 been required to operate 5 more offices that never existed prior to the law societies. So those monies that are required to run those operations to ensure that the public has access to offices where they can lodge their complaints has been the reason why we required so much funding, of which the Fidelity Fund has assisted us in the first 3 years. But because there's been so much increase in claims, as this is the information given to us by the fund, they have more claims that they have had to process in the past 3 years, which has resulted in their solvency ratio decreasing. And they have then reduced our funding by an amount of close to 80 million, coming from 223 million to 183 million. So during that 5 years, we have consistently continued to fund the LSSA with the little money that we had, and we needed to slightly increase the subscriptions of legal practitioners by 500 rands, if I'm correct, just to continue to maintain the functions of the LPC. And the LPC does so many things. I'm not going to come here and just list everything that the LPC has to do on a daily basis, based on the problem mainly that legal practitioners consistently are stealing monies or are alleged to steal money from members of the public. If you look at the processes of doing those disciplinary and investigation processes, they cost us a lot of money. And the monies that we collect from LPs go to that process. So there is not even reserves that we keep as the LPC. We do continue in the past 5 years to fund. And if we have to cut because now we've run out of reserves, that is what we can do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charity. I believe the LSSA and the LPC are having in-committee meetings regarding this issue. But it's just a slight comment on the LPC funding the LSSA with the little money that you have. Our understanding is that legal education is ring-fenced. The allocation that you get from the LPFF to fund legal education is ring-fenced. So the challenge that we have as the HOC is how is the LPC funding us with the little money that they have when we are supposed to be getting a ring-fenced allocation from the LPFF. It's just a comment. We're not going to engage in debates. We are still having engagements with the EXCO of the LPC, and they are meaningful. We had a very successful meeting, I think, last week, and we will continue to do so. I will then hand over to Vice President Joanne to facilitate the adoption of the financial report.
We're going to get the runners running today with all the technical issues. I do apologize. So moving on to the HOC approvals. Ashwin, if you're going to take us through the first resolution that we would like to pass, we will be calling for a proposer of this motion from HOC.
I think the preamble is that the HOC is aware of the responsibilities for the control environment and risk management, including financial sustainability of the LSSA. The statement by the Audit Committee Chairperson on behalf of the Audit and Risk Committee, as per the annual report is noted, the HOC noted the assurance and guidance provided by the Audit and Risk Committee and the Internal Audit Subcommittee, which assists the HOC in discharging its responsibilities in these critical areas and its responsibility to corporate governance. So the first one we require is that the HOC acknowledges the above statement and approves, 1, the audited financial statements for the year ended 31st of December and considering the Audit Committee statement included in the annual report. We need a mover and seconder.
Could I please get an HOC approval from the floor? Thank you. We have a Madam President and a seconder is Krish Govender. Thank you. Our second statement for approval.
is that the audit fee for 2023 audit is 533,000, noting the auditors are in the first year of a 3-year LSSA rotational policy for auditing services. May I have a mover and seconder, please?
We are calling for a proposal here. Thank you, Tandeka. We need a seconder. Thank you, Yogeshni Naika.
Thank you. Then the third one is the approval of the audit committee recommendation that allowances and honoraria remain unchanged. The audit committee will review these items once the sustainability and implementation report is finalized.
Can we please have a, thank you, Clive is a proposer, seconder. Thank you.
And then the approved audited financial statements, once adopted at the AGM, can be incorporated as an annexure onto the 2023 annual report after the AGM.
Can we have a proposer for this motion, please? Thank you, Tian Jube, and a seconder. Thank you, Elvira LaRue.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chair. May I just say thank you to all the members of the Audit Committee who have made our task easy, all the people who are employed at the LSSA. I want to emphasize again for cooperating with us during the course of the year. And thank you to you, Madam President and Deputy President. Thank you.